But firstly, let's get to the Klemmer, David Klemmer, breaking news out of Newcastle in some strife after yesterday's or after the game on the weekend, apparently refusing to leave the field when they wanted him to come off and arguing with a trainer. Can you talk us through this, Kenty?
Yeah, look, it happened late in the game, and here he is here now. You can see the trainer down there in the bottom right corner is trying to get him off. It happened over a series of tackles throughout the last minutes of the game where they continually tried to get him off the field. Now, Klemmer just refused to go. He's been disciplined. He hasn't been chosen for this weekend's game.
So he was dropped for that?
Well, we assume so, Braith. Look, there's been no reason given for the dropping, but the club did put out a statement this afternoon saying he has been disciplined over this and he hasn't been named for this weekend's game.
What's strange is they've given him a show cause notice, but taken action before he actually has a chance to show cause. Like, he's been stood down before the hearing. Or is there more to it, Paul? Because last night, you sit here and you just talk about the fact that, you know, he doesn't suit their style of football. You don't reckon that would upset him?
Well, they knocked back his release. I think this is clearly the issue, Crawls. He's had a verbal with the trainer. He stays on for an extra 2 minutes after being told to leave the field. And as you've already said, he's been issued a show cause notice. He can't. I don't think he can train with the team until he responds to the notice.
But this happens a lot.
Dave, this is outrageous.
This happens a lot.
But it speaks to a wider issue with the club.
Of course it does. So it's not about this. It's bigger than this, Dave. There's a problem up at Newcastle that everyone's ducking and covering from. There's players up there that aren't happy. There's a division within the club, and no one can deny it. You just got to look at their performances.
What do you I don't know. What do you mean division in the club?
There's a division. There's obviously some players out there that aren't real happy. And David Klemmer on the weekend has probably fired up. Something's happened to him on the field. He didn't want to come off, but I assure you there's got to be more to it, Paul, because this, as Brace said, happens all the time.
It happens every weekend. It happens every weekend at a club where a player doesn't want to come off the field. He'll argue with his trainers. I don't know to what extent, but a show cause notice is very dramatic at 6 p.m. on a Tuesday night where they haven't picked him in the side. There's got to be more to it. There just has to be.
Well, it's interesting that yesterday Parramatta approached the Knights to get him on a loan deal. My understanding was Klemmer was willing to go, but he's got next year at Newcastle, he wanted next year at Parramatta, plus a year after, which Parramatta were not willing to go to, which suggested the fact that maybe he's happy to leave Newcastle, which, look, given everything that's happened in the past 4 days at Newcastle.
Do they need this too? Because they've made a statement tonight. They've had Adam O'Brien, which we're going to get to soon, has had 2 press conferences in 3 days. Yeah. They've obviously under a lot of pressure. There's a lot of focus, spotlight on the club.
Well, he needs to regain control.
Do they really need that tonight?
Well, he needs to regain control too, though, Braith. He didn't handle that press conference well after Sunday's game. He's come out today to try and correct what he said out there because he got a little bit wayward in his message. Whether we'll talk about that later.
We've got the press conference, Kenny. Let's get to it now. Let's have a look at Adam O'Brien's press conference.
Adam, I guess last night, NRL 360, there was a lot of chat saying that you said you've got 6 to 8 weeks starting next season. I guess, do you want to clarify that? Is that
Yeah, I've been told a bit. I've watched snippets of it of last night. I'm glad that you did bring it up. Look, the press conference after the game, I'd like to have back. I clearly didn't articulate the message that I was trying to get across, and I apologise for that. It looks like I'm an egomaniac. That wasn't my message. The message was I was trying to talk to the supporter that sits on the hill that must be wondering at times, do they practice defence? Do they do tackle technique at training? The boys are training at a really high standard. In terms of what I've witnessed at successful clubs, the field session, what I've been sort of a part of down there with Craig at Melbourne, very, very similar sessions, the same intensity. So they're doing that. And Hayden, coming from Penrith last year and winning a competition, the fitness program here, the boys are training to that. And Paddy in the gym was at the Roosters for 10 years and, highly successful club, and the boys are doing that. So I'm trying to give hope to the people on the hill that we are training at a high level. Now, is that translating to the field? No, it's not. And that responsibility is squarely on me. But again, I know that those questions will be being asked in the, people's minds when they're leaving our games to think, what do they do all week? Well, I can assure you we're not sitting around playing euchre. We're in there, training really hard.
Would you say this is the toughest part of your coaching career right now?
Yeah, I've had, right up there, toughest. I've had better weeks.
Yeah, look, this is a touchstone moment for Adam O'Brien. His career right now is at that tipping point. If you want to get into where we're at here, after the season they've had, where they've shown no improvement on the previous 2 seasons, in fact, they've gone backwards, where you've got player unrest, you've got a club that's trying to turn things around. Phil Gardner's removed himself from much of the football operation, which he needed to do because he was inexperienced, and I think after putting his toe in the water there for the best part of 18 months, he failed to come up to what they need. So they've got, respectfully, a rookie football manager in Danny Badiris who's been subtly shifted sideways to bring in Peter Parr. They are trying to start the turnaround. Adam O'Brien has figured out clearly that he either is part of the solution or part of the problem, and it begins now. To Buzz, what Buzz said last night, that they've got 6 to 8 weeks, he's got 6 to 8 weeks next year, I don't think he's got that. Because there's no way the Knights, if the Knights find out 8 weeks into next season that they've made it blue, then next season's gone as well. And Adam O'Brien in that press conference today touched on the fact that their off-season, that in their summer training was not up to speed this year as it should have been, that's the one thing he said he would like to get in order going into next season. So that's where it starts next season. It begins for him now. It appears today with David Klemmer. And let's talk about player discipline and how players buy into what's going on at teams. David Klemmer is known for not wanting to go off the field. Okay, let's cop that. It happened at Canterbury. It's happened before. But then we'll talk about Brandon Smith later and what Melbourne have done to him since he got sin-binned and suspended a couple of weeks back, and how they drive their club discipline, which Adam O'Brien's been aware of. And I think for too long up there he's been running a soft ship, and they basically have been taking the mickey out of him. So I think it starts.
I agree with Kenny. I think Adam's coaching career is right on the precipice. If this Newcastle, don't forget this Newcastle Knights side can still get the wooden spoon. Okay, they play the Tigers this weekend. Now, if they lose to the Tigers this weekend, you can bet your bottom dollar the heat will be turned up. They then play the Broncos away. They play the Raiders at home, Titans away, and they finish with the Sharks at home. I haven't got the Knights winning any of those games.
Yeah.
The situation that's saving him up there, though, is that Philip Gardner came out in the local press last week and assured him that he was safe.
Philip Gardner has said a lot of different things.
He has said all along this guy's safe. Well, Dave,
he said at
I
the
know...
start of the year he's got to offer him a lifetime contract.
Nathan Brown was going to be the longest-serving coach in the club's history.
But the thing at the moment that is saving him, and why Buzz would have sat here last night and said he'll have until 6 or 8 rounds into next season, is because Gardner has backed him. Gardner's now removed himself from the situation by bringing Parry in.
But that's
exactly the point.
That's the point, yeah. Gardner has no longer got the say. Parr will have the say. And Parr will sit there over summer, and if he decides things aren't looking the way they need to look, he can still find himself a coach. He's got, as Adam O'Brien himself said, they've got trainers and strength and conditioning blokes in from the Roosters and the Panthers and everywhere else. They are in good hands there.
At the end of the day in Newcastle, Philip Gardner has the say. That's who has the say.
I think he's pulled himself out of that because I don't think he's been.
I think it'll come down to the board.
10 out of 10.
I do. I think Peter Parr's been put there for a reason, not only for his experience and his know-how, but I believe he can make a tough call, and Gardner removes himself from what has been a car crash since he got there.
I think O'Brien's doing the right thing, though. I think right now he's sitting there and he's saying, you know what, it starts now. After the weekend we just had, he got his message wrong. But in essence, what he was saying is true. He has sat there and witnessed Craig Bellamy coach teams to premierships and the standards that have been driven within those clubs. He then went to the Roosters and he watched them win a premiership and the standards that were driven within those clubs. He knows the standards you need to require.
I agree, and that was the appeal of getting him.
And that was the point. That's the point I think he was trying to say, without actually saying it as he intended to. But it has to start. And at some point, you've got to start living the standard, not talking the standard. And I think for too long at Newcastle, they talk about what they want to do, and they talk about doing this and that, and it's been going on for too long where they just basically they pull the shades down over everybody's eyes and just say, look, don't worry about us, we're going okay. When in fact they're not doing what Newcastle are known for, which is playing tough, hard football and being constantly competitive.
Standards are one thing, but roster's another.
Well, that's part of it, Brace.
Yeah, they can set all the standards they like, but who are they buying next year?
They've bought Adam Elliott and Jack Etherington.
Yes,
exactly.
and some
Okay.
players from England.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, it means they've got another lean year because the two problems this year, as they've identified, is the 6 and 7. Milford's going to the Dolphins next year. Clifford and Clunes were both brought in. There was a bit of a rap on them at the beginning of the year, and everyone was marvelling how well they were going. But for whatever reason, their form just went right off. And neither of them now are producing what they need to produce.
And it goes further than that too. If you go back to the start of the year, Clifford was almost the best player in the competition over the early rounds. And guess who else was? Dane Gagai.
He looks unhappy, Gagai.
And he's
looks
fallen off,
unhappy.
his form's fallen off a cliff. I'd go as far as last year as to say he was almost the unsung hero in that South Sydney team.
Yeah.
Like he was nearly their best player towards the back end of the season. But what's gone wrong with him up there? Well, he's playing like a guy that doesn't appear happy.
Yeah, I agree. He looks unhappy, and at South Sydney he played with confidence. He played under a coach that gave him confidence. I think we're seeing an unhappy footballer.